Hello, in this broadcast, the information program Time. Today, the General Staff of Russia officially announced the number of losses among the federal forces during the combat operation in Chechnya. As of the 19th of January, 513 military of the Russian armed forces had died. The internal forces lost 40 people. Missing in Chechnya today are 279 military service personnel. These facts were made public at the session of the State Duma by the Deputy Head of the General Staff, the General Vyacheslav Zherebtsov. According to his information, the Dudayev gunmen in combat sustained 3,874 fatalities. Reporting on the last events in Grozny in detail are our special correspondents Alexander Anasovsky and Vladimir Polozhentsov. Today, one may confidently state that the first phase of the military operation in Chechnya is complete. The former Dudayev residence was captured by storming divisions of the 276th Motor Artillery Regiment of the Ural District. Now it is in the command of the 8th Corps of General Vrokhlin. Entering the final clash were volunteers only. The film crew of the program Time was the only journalist presence in the epicenter of events. Yesterday, Russian aviation launched devastating blows on the palace. The attack lasted only 40 minutes, and only during that time the clouds dispersed over the area, yet several concrete penetrating bombs destroyed the Dudayev bunker. After this, according to agents' information, within the camp of mercenaries, panic ensued. At night, the majority of gunmen left the building through underground passages, taking prisoners with them. Only suicide fighters remained. They gathered a large number of explosives and wanted to blow up whatever remained of the palace. Because of this, the front units of the Russian army could have suffered, but the motor artillery units didn't permit the Dudayev followers to commit yet another crime. As you see, the Chechens haven't gathered their dead for several days. Lieutenant General, how's the situation in Grozny currently? The situation overall is normalizing. The key objects have all been taken. I think that in the near future, the basic questions will be resolved. And after that, problems will be dealt with by the internal forces. Units correspondingly, of course, will remain here for now to provide aid and deal with suddenly emerging tasks. Can you tell me, are there many casualties in the army? I can't say the specific number because I don't have that information, but there are casualties. Each day, how many are there injured or killed, approximately? Approximately, if you take our units here, there are from 2 to 5 such cases per day. It's premature to speak of a final victory yet. Despite the fact that the majority of Grozny is under the control of Russian forces, the soldiers will be facing danger here for a long time. Snipers' activity is exhausting, and mortar firing of positions of federal forces occurs sporadically. The Dudayev followers still have several heavy weapons. The crazed gunmen, dressed up in Russian uniforms, often attack Russian soldiers. Yesterday, Sergeant Sidnikov and we were returning with a report to our post, and behind us here is a residential zone where we were told not to shoot, and we said we would not shoot. We went there to get water, and we were ambushed. From a 2-meter distance, we gave them the orders to stand still and drop their weapons, and we would not shoot. And having been shot from a distance of 2 meters into the forehead, 2 centimeters above his right eyebrow, the Sergeant Sidnikov was killed. He was the operator of our brigade. There were 7 mujaheds involved in this. 4 were dressed in black and 3 in white coats. Do such cases occur often? Yes, very often. Or they send to our soldiers' posts women, old people, to beg for some bread or some water, but in actual fact, they're gaining intelligence and reporting. The method involved in this reconnaissance is they take children hostage, that is the Dudayev supporters, they send the parents. Parents are forced to fulfill their demands. They kill also local residents, basically those who support the opposition, and yet the government of Hadjiyev, despite everything, is beginning to function actively. They're awaiting the arrival of civil specialists who will begin to restore Grozny. The remaining scattered gangs are being squeezed out into the mountains. There they will be dealt with by well-trained special designation squads. Let's go. Thank you. And, of course, the aviation. And you can be assured that Russian pilots know how to perform. We have a unique opportunity to show you what precisely targeted bomb blows are. This film was provided for the program Time by the head commander of the Air Force, the Colonel General Teynekin. The press service of the government of Russia reported today that the resistance of unlawful gangs near Grozny is extremely stubborn and fanatical. There are known cases of gunmen surrounded within the city blowing themselves up. Near Chernarechye, there's a concentration of around 1,500 criminals who, in their arsenal, have a few tanks and mortar artillery installations. Chernarechye and Prigorodnaya are the plotted arms of the gunmen, where they take cover from artillery fire and aviation attacks. Now the participants of the illegal militarized formations may be subjected to capital punishment. This results from the amendments and addenda to the Criminal Code of Russia, which were entered today by the State Duma. However, the parliamentarians stipulated that individuals who voluntarily secede from the unlawful formations and who surrender their weapons to the organs of power are absolved from criminal responsibility. According to the press service of the Russian government, the operation of internal forces in Chechnya is expanding. They've already taken over protection of the railway stretch Mozdok-Chervlenne. Through efforts of the engineer airport teams, the airport Grozny North is being restored. With every day, in Grozny there are more army block posts. They're being established on streets and regiments seized from the Dudaev forces and facilitate the movement of Russian forces. This post in the southwest of the city is probably closest to the front lines. There's only 300 meters away from the gunmen positions. In blockading the building, one prisoner was taken. Here's his bulletproof vest and his helmet. He was slightly injured. He was hiding under a blanket. In the neighboring building, a training class for gunmen was discovered. Shooters with RPG-7s. They have obviously no evident devices for trainings, so they use the walls, they draw combat carriers and tanks on them, draw targets, and using RPGs and hence teach the peripheral population to shoot. In the basement of this same building of the block post, under the protection of the military, local residents found refuge. Russian soldiers give a portion of their rations to homeless, women, elderly, and children. I come here and ask for bread from the soldiers. We had a little in storage. We knew there would be war, and we stored our bread. Why couldn't have Yeltsin and Dudaev reached an agreement? Why? The reasons and circumstances in the emergence of the critical situation in the Chechen Republic will be investigated by a special commission within the State Duma of Russia. Today, its chairman was elected. He is the member of the Duma faction, Democratic Party of Russia, Stanislav Kovaruhin. The circumstances for the cancellation of the talks on the ceasefire and the ceasing of bloodshed in Chechnya on the site were clarified by the Commissioner of Human Rights of Russia, Sergei Kovalov, on Thursday. He returned to Moscow from Nazran. Our top officials lie without constraint openly to us. Those who are sending children to their death, those who are destroying a large city, they say on television, this was Dudaev who organized the genocide of his own people. Let's think about this. What could prompt someone to say such words? We understand that there is a firm conviction there that we all are cattle to whom anything at all may be said. This was said in Moscow at the International Forum, which opened fascism in the totalitarian and post-totalitarian society, which gathered representatives of democratic forces, rights advocates, and the press. The supermission of those who rule us is one. Every moment, every second, if this would be necessary, that we should be submissive and pleasant to anyone, even of slightly higher stature. I don't know whether we can call this fascism. For now, we deserve it. The fact that our army should storm our own cities. We deserve this because we permit ourselves to live with this. The role of the army is undisputably great in strengthening statehood, and to say the least, it's improper to slander soldiers for fulfilling orders. But the strengthening of a court cannot be served by the search for enemies and traitors among those who openly speak out against the war in Chechnya. Incidentally, we give you an opportunity yourselves to assess the words of the Minister of Defense said by him at a press conference in Mozdok. At yesterday's meeting in Mozdok, after the report of the commander of the group of federal forces in Chechnya, the Lieutenant General Kvashnin, the Minister of Defense congratulated the officers on fulfilling the first phase of the operation to restore constitutional order in Chechnya. At the press conference for journalists of state television companies, Pavel Grachev harshly condemned those who were hindering the fulfillment of the military task. These 18-year-old boys were dying for Russia, and they were dying with a smile on their faces. And we should erect monuments to them, but they are slandered. This, what's his name, the deputy, Kovalov, he cannot find a blemish on them. He's looking for a blemish. This is an enemy of Russia, a traitor of Russia. And he's greeted everywhere warmly. That Yushchenkov, that vermin, I can't call him anything else. He scoffs at that very army which gave him an education and a title. Unfortunately, in accordance with the resolution, he is still a colonel of the Russian army. And he, that same vermin, defends those scoundrels who want the country to collapse. I personally can't understand this. I don't understand it. I don't want to say that I'm the only patriot of Russia. You saw them today in the dugouts. They are all patriots. They're the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, and the 50-year-olds. And they all die, from the private to the general, but no one leaves his post. Lately, much is said about the fact that the reorganization of the higher echelon of the leadership of the armed forces is connected mostly with the dismissal of the three deputy ministers of defense, Gromov, Mironov, and Kondratyev. Is this true? As of today, there were neither decrees from the President about dismissal, nor conversations with the Minister of Defense, Pavel Sergeyevich Grachev. And where is this information from, and why does it come? I can't understand. Is this connected with the Chechen crisis? Regarding the Chechen crisis or war in Chechnya, we, the deputy ministers of defense in general, were not informed that a decision was made to conduct such an operation. And when Pavel Sergeyevich invited me and said that you must head up the operation in the Chechen Republic, I said, Pavel Sergeyevich, I'm ready. Appoint me as the commander of the Northern Caucasus military district, and I will take full responsibility on myself and am ready to head it. In the role of the Deputy Minister of Defense, individually, without the organ of leadership, I could not go there, and this was not done. Sources of mass media report that ostensibly an order was not fulfilled. There was not such an order given. It doesn't exist today. And because of all these discrepancies, the three combat generals who went through Afghanistan have become unfit, although no decrees nor orders were given. We're fulfilling our duty and continue to do so. But already, simultaneously to our posts, other people have been appointed. This is confusing. No one is explaining this. There are many questions to ask the high military leadership of Russia, and first of all, because during the military operation in Chechnya, many mistakes were permitted. This was admitted today by Viktor Chernomyrdin. He urged journalists to objectively illuminate events in the country, especially in Chechnya. At a meeting with the directors and journalists of the pan-Russian state television radio company, Viktor Chernomyrdin emphasized that he's not a supporter of turning all of Russian television into a state-run TV, but expressed the need to renew the legal basis of state television so as to precisely define the rights and obligations of the state before television and television before the state. Today, Viktor Chernomyrdin met with representatives of women's organizations. Don't believe it if you're told that consciously mothers would be prepared to recognize this war as just and give their children up to the front. Don't believe it even if these women are politicians. The meeting of Viktor Chernomyrdin with the Duma faction, the Women of Russia, with the chairman of the regional unions of parents of military servicemen and committees of soldiers' mothers rang from repressed anger. The army demonstrated a low combat capability and the military leaders' inept leadership. Thrown on the front lines were youngsters of the autumn conscription without shoes, clothing, food or water. Often to the hospitals not the injured are brought in, but those ill with pneumonia or jaundice. There are also known cases of burials in common graves. Therefore the demands of the mothers are to immediately stop combat, find and punish those guilty in the armed conflict, and not send to trial military servicemen who refuse to fight, and all those dead or missing are to be buried with dignified combat honor, and apply military benefits to families. And the main thing is the truth. The women want to and have the right to know the truth about their children. To date, no reliable source exists. The military conscription stations have no information, and in the newspapers there's a vacillation of figures from 509 to 1,024 dead and up to 1,500 injured. One can bear to read this about strangers, but about one's own, it's insufferable. Complete information about the injured, dead, and prisons is necessary. Chernomyrdin immediately issued instructions on all questions touched on, including instructions to the Ministry of Defense. And in front of the White House, as previously, there stands a small tree decorated with red and black ribbons. The Federative Council adopted a resolution today to instruct the government to develop a draft law on social security for citizens who suffered as a result of the armed conflict in Chechnya. The Federative Council issued today an initiative to adopt an amendment to the 102nd Statute of the Constitution, pursuant to which the deployment of armed forces within the country would be within the competence of this Chamber of Parliament. The Federative Council addressed the State Duma to examine the amendment in a priority order. The specification of constitutional procedures precipitated by events in Chechnya. Discussion, despite its heatedness, indicated the fact that the Federative Council quite cautiously approaches any changes in the Constitution. I myself am not a supporter of changing the Constitution because while there are political passions and complications, amendments could be of a purely conjectural nature. The senators declined the proposal to change the law on security adopted by the Supreme Soviet before. As was reported, work is already underway on a new law, and it's more logical to submit it for examination in the near future. Several senators again cast doubt on the feasibility of the participation of the Chamber of the Higher Chamber of Parliament in the Security Council because, as was asserted, this narrows the functions of the chamber itself. As the Senator Raketsky noted, such restrictions are necessary when the Speaker could only meet with the President or executive power underground. We shouldn't decide within the Security Council operational issues. This is not our business, but only the business of the executive power. The Security Council decides global issues of security of the Russian nation. And in this capacity and in this form, the presence of permanent members, that is the chairman of both chambers, in my view, is absolutely justified. The Federative Council approved the law on restoring protection for the savings of Russian citizens. Hence, as noted by the chairman of the committee budget, Nikolai Gonchar, for the first time the government recognizes its obligation before those who entrusted their money savings to it. Also, 8 laws must be adopted. The main thing is to stabilize the economy so that the depreciated deposits may be restored. In accordance with preliminary agreement, today a telephone conversation between the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, was held with the Federal Chancellor of the FRG, Helmut Kohl. As the press service of the head of state of Russia stated, on the Chancellor's request, the President informed him about developments in Chechnya, efforts of the Russian leadership to normalize the situation, and the establishment of peace processes after completing the military stage of solving the problem. The meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Russia and the FRG and Inquisitor Klaus Kinkel will be held Sunday in the Swiss city Bern. Klaus Kinkel intends to expound the position of the Bonn leadership vis-à-vis the Chechen conflict. Yesterday, the Bundestag deputies criticized the military action of Russia, and they called on Russian leadership to find paths for a political solution for the conflict. Russia and the European Council, will they be together? When is the restoration of a full-scale level of mutual relations possible between them? These and other related questions were discussed by the head of the administration of the President of Russia, Sergei Filatov, with the heads of the European Council. He delivered from Moscow a message from President Yeltsin and responses from Russia to 20 questions of the Council, types of obligations, setting out the terms for membership within that organization, toward which Russia moved slowly but surely in the last few months. Today, the situation is severely complicated by what is occurring in Chechnya. Of course, the process of entering, or the entry itself of Russia into the European Council, is not placed under doubt, because unconditionally this is necessary for Russia and for Europe. I think that Russia's joining the European Council is very desirable. Of course, great damage was caused by the military actions in Chechnya. The chairman of the Parliamentary Assembly of the European Council, at the session of which in the end of the month they will examine questions connected with Chechen events, Miguel Martinez, feels that this problem is an internal affair of Russia. Regime in Grozny is unlawful and unacceptable, but the methods of resolving it have also turned out to be just as unacceptable. The process of Russia entering the European Council is disturbed, and yet it will affect only the time frame of its entry, he said. Today, the presidents of Russia and Kazakhstan met in the Kremlin, and they first spoke on a one-to-one basis. According to Nursultan Nazarbayev, they agreed to emerge on a new level of mutual relations. The confirmation of those words were documents signed during the course of the official meeting. Russia and Kazakhstan have stepped beyond the common borders of the CIS by confirming their mutual obligations through two-sided documents. Boris Yeltsin and Nursultan Nazarbayev signed a declaration about the broadening and deepening of Russian-Kazakhstani cooperation, the agreement on the legal status of the citizens of both countries, and the agreement on the procedure of mutual obtaining of citizenship. Simultaneously, the heads of the governments of Russia and Kazakhstan signed several documents, the main of which is the agreement on a customs union, a free trade regime, and military agreement. It's noteworthy that the agreement on the customs union, providing the imminent revoking of excises and the regime of customs control on the border, was joined by Belarus, and this document was signed by the ambassador of Belarus in Moscow. There were not enough integrational processes between the two countries, and now this is a major step forward from the point of view of integration of the two countries. 17 documents were signed on the level of government and by the two presidents. I'm certain that today's signing will greatly expedite our relations and will assuage the fears of our Russians who live in Kazakhstan and the Kazakhs who live in Russia, because we finally have signed the agreement on citizenship. I put into first place the political agreement on the citizenship or naturalization of the citizens of our countries, which emphasizes our special relations, and secondly, the payment union, when we have in essence begun to approach the creation of a sole customs expanse, free movement of cargo, and the exclusion of duties and taxes, and the use of the territories of each country for the free transportation of cargo. It's clear that all these decisions will not yield immediate results, and yet they could be a prologue to a qualitatively new political and economic integration of the former United Republics as a first step in forming a common market of the Commonwealth. Ukraine and Turkmenistan successfully agreed to resolve the natural gas problem. The volume of delivery of Turkmenian gas and payments were discussed in Kiev between the presidents of Ukraine, Leonid Kuchma, and Saparmurat Niyazov. The result of the official visit of the president of Turkmenistan to Ukraine was the signing of a series of documents on the delivery of Turkmenian natural gas and Ukraine's payment for these shipments. After the meeting of Niyazov and Kuchma tete-a-tete, the volume of natural gas was defined, which Ukraine would purchase in 1995. It is 20 billion cubic meters. At the meeting with the press, the president of Turkmenistan said that, if necessary, he could provide even more, as much as would be necessary, and Ukraine will pay partially in currency and partially by goods. In the list, there are more than 1,000 items. agreement was reached that Ukraine would liquidate its debt for delivered natural gas. The president of Turkmenistan noted that not a single international organization would provide Kiev such discounted terms as deferment of payment and prolonging the debt for 7 years with minimum annual interest. Both sides, Turkmenistan and Ukraine, expressed satisfaction with the results of the visit. In Azerbaijan, today they're remembering the victims of the tragic events in Baku, the 20th of January 1990, when, as a result of deployment of Soviet forces in the city, more than 130 people died and more than 700 were injured. Speaking at the mournful rally in Baku, Gitar Aliyev called on the citizens of the Republic to be prepared for new casualties for the sake of freedom and independence of the country. We continue. The government of Russia announced today the steadfast adherence of government policy in the area of privatization. The government felt it necessary to state this because of the many appeals to organs of executive power on the question of the privatization of state and municipal property in the year 1995. The first vice premier of the government of Russia, Anatoly Chubais, who manages the activities of the State Committee of Property, said that Mr. Polyvanov will not work in that department, and this question has already been decided. Hence, he commented on the rumors of Polyvanov's possible dismissal, whose performance this week was publicly criticized by President Yeltsin. Also, Anatoly Chubais avoided answering the question, does this mean that a corresponding document has already been signed about the dismissal of Polyvanov? The contradictory mutual relations between the Duma and the Cabinet of Ministers again emerged at today's discussion of economic laws, and mostly the deputy and government positions clashed on the increase of minimum salary and the budget. If previously parliamentarians wanted to increase salary, today they reconsidered and by their decision supported the government. The calculations made by the Ministry of Finances indicate that additional expenditures in order to create a minimum wage level of 54,100 rubles will require overall throughout the country additional spending in the amount of 139 trillion rubles. I responsibly quote this figure. In these circumstances, it turns out that inflation, when calculated on a monthly basis, will be between 20 to 25%. Possibly, these explanations from the Minister of Finances influenced the deputy's position, nor is it excluded that the Duma agreed with the government because of its own tactical calculations. Because having handed this law over to the Cabinet of Ministers, the parliamentarians didn't concede in the basic political document of the country, the budget. So how much the Chechen conflict will influence the situation, we'll be able to assess that in a few months when we hope the war ends. We'll determine how much money we will need to restore the industry and domestic sphere. The deputies didn't adopt the budget after all, and representatives of the government left the Duma empty-handed. We observed in the years 1990 and 91, in a situation of conflict, what the significance is of the absence of precise financial directions of the government. This, of course, promotes separatism. And if we protract this for another 2 or 3 months, this will make the examination of the annual budget meaningless. It was decided to return to the budget next Wednesday, by then having specified positions. Today's session of the Parliament with the Cabinet Ministers ended with the deputies declining the law on the government. During trading today at the Moscow Interbank Currency Exchange, the rate of the American dollar exceeded the level of Black Tuesday and was at 3,947 rubles per dollar. This is 31 rubles higher than yesterday's indicator, but specialists had predicted that this would happen, and today. Alexander Alexandrovich, the ruble panic continues. We want finally to hear from someone who's ready to tell us honestly and whom you can believe. Will the 50,000 denominations be pulled from circulation? Will currency accounts be frozen? What will happen? I can give my word, and I do give my word to you and to those who are watching. There are no plans to pull the 50,000 ruble denominations out of circulation or freeze currency accounts, or there is no monstrous secret package which first was to be opened on the 14th at 0000 hours. One could imagine that at 0000 hours all the banks are operating, everyone is sitting and waiting, or on the 20th at another time. These dates pass by. There's absolutely nothing to open or expose because there is no such thing in existence. There is a sense that quite goal-oriented and premeditated action is being carried out. This is done not by panic mongers, not those people who say that a meteor will hit the world and we'll all die together, or Martians will land on Earth and catch every blonde person and cut out their appendixes without anesthesia, and you have to either hide or color your hair. There are always these bizarre things, but this is not bizarre. This required a concerted effort to send a fax that a package would arrive at a certain time, or declare a hunt on the ruble in order to defeat it, which incidentally will not happen anyway. What regards the ordinary citizens, I can give only one piece of advice. Remember one truth in market economy. If something is advertised very adamantly or forced on you, don't buy it. That means that someone will make big money. And those who lose will be the usual losers. Today, the Prime Minister of Finland, Esko Aho, was hosted in the Kremlin by the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin. Congratulating the guest on the entry into the European Union, the President expressed hope that now relations between the two countries will develop along a tripartite system, the European Union, Finland and Russia. The President emphasized that I hope that you will exert influence and assistance for Russia in entering the European Union. The meeting of Boris Yeltsin and Esko Aho was held behind closed doors. Today, the Prime Minister of Finland was a guest of the Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia, Alexei II. And the President of Russia had the pleasure today of executing perhaps one of the most enjoyable presidential responsibilities. Today, in the Vladimirsky Hall of the Bolshoi Kremlin Palace, the President of the Russian Federation, Boris Yeltsin, presented national awards. Russia is honoring those with awards who have given marvelous examples of the stoic human spirit and demonstrated valor and bravery in the most difficult situations, who through their labor entrenches the great ideals of humanitarianism and goodness. 39 of our compatriots, these are people of the most varied ages and professions, were presented today with high awards and honorary titles. 9 Russians have become Cavaliers of the Order for Services of the Homeland, a new Russian honor. 5 received the esteemed title, the Hero of Russia. The awards found their heroes in the past as well. One can say this about the war veteran Ivan Kolis, who received the title Hero of the Soviet Union for the Warsaw Operation 50 years ago. And today, from the hands of the President, he received this Golden Star, but already as a hero of the Russian Federation. The year of the 50th anniversary of the victory has come, and today in the Concert Hall of Russia, an evening was held which marked the beginning of a series of triumphant functions dedicated to this great date. And only you were able, my Russia. This is the title of the festive theatrical presentation, and so it happened that all residents of our homeland were called Russians by the world. Lyudmila Zakina said in her greeting. The chairman of the government of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, ended his speech as follows. Let the year of the 50th anniversary of the great victory will be the year of reunification of our great peoples. Those who fought in the Great Patriotic War never made distinctions among Russians, Tatars, or Lithuanians. They were combat comrades. Their unity was unity forged in blood without any lofty words. Therefore, such celebrations for the old soldiers are, first of all, a reason to meet again and remember. We will remember as long as we live. It's difficult for us to forget that when we were 18-year-old girls, we worked like men. There should never be such a war. The sports information comes after the ads. All the best. Good evening, friends. Today in the Kremlin, the President of Russia, Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin, as you know already, presented awards, and at the same time, he awarded honorary orders to sports activists Shamir Tarpisha, Vitaly Smirnov, and Valentin Sysh. In the end of January, in the German city Dortmund, the European Figure Skating Championships will start, but unfortunately, because of an injury, the partners in those competitions, the Olympic champions, Oksana Grishuk and Evgeny Platov, will not participate. The athletes hope that they will be in good shape on the eve of the World Championship in the English city, Birmingham, in the beginning of March. Today in the capital, the presentation of the traditional international soccer tournament, the Cup of the Commonwealth Championships, was held. The founders of the National Fund of Sports of Russia and the Russian Soccer Union established a prize fund of $100,000. For the first time in 3 years, all 12 representatives of the Federation of the CIS countries and also the best teams of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and the Olympic team of Russia will be competing. At the preliminary level, 16 teams are split into groups of 4. Competitions start the 29th of January, the 2nd of February, semi-finals the 4th, the finals. Games will be held in the 3 Manèges of Moscow. The former captain of the Argentinian soccer team, Diego Maradona, confirmed that he will return to soccer after his 15-month disqualification. In the Swiss Alps, another level of the world competitions on downhill racing was held. Performing very well were the Austrian alpine skiers, taking 4th place among the 6 best. However, even such a fierce company couldn't get ahead of the ambitious Italian Cristiano Donnino. He surpassed everyone. The Open Australian Tennis Championship each day brings us a surprise. Another casualty among the seeded players is the famous German Michael Stich, who lost to the Czech Karl Novacek in 3 sets. The Muscovite Andrei Olkhovsky is out of the race, losing to the Frenchman Olivier Daletto. And now about the weather. Hello. The winter in the north of the European part of Russia has decided to remind us of its presence with cold. Changes in the weather are connected with the growth in atmospheric pressure. Tomorrow in the Arkhangelsk district, the Nenix Autonomous District, in pre-polar Ural, in the Republic of Komi in the Volga-Vest area, it will cool down to -10 to 15 degrees. On the coast of the Arctic seas, strong winds will remain with isolated snows and blizzards. It'll be a little warmer in Karelia in the northwestern area. Here it will be variably cloudy with day temperatures of -7 to 10. Atlantic air is sustaining cloudy and warm weather on the Kola Peninsula, where during the day it will be not lower than -1 to 3. In the Baltic countries, the Kaliningrad district, variably cloudy skies without precipitation, -3 to 7. On Sunday, the pressure here will begin to drop, winds will increase, and temperatures will go higher. Snow will begin to fall. On the Central Volga, the central Chernozem area, Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova, it will remain clear and cold. During the day, -10 to 15. In Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova, -4 to 8 degrees. On the lower Don, in the Krasnodar, Stavropol areas, the northern Caucasus, and over the lower Volga, there will be stronger influence of an anticyclone. Here it will be variably cloudy with temperatures of -3 to 8. In Chechnya and Ingushetia, -1 to 3. In Dagestan, as high as +3. On the Black Sea coast of the Krasnodar Rim area, variably cloudy skies, temperatures in Sochi +4 to 6 degrees. But despite the cold weather for now, the Black Sea resorts are already awaiting their vacationers. Near Novorossiysk, storm northeasterly winds are expected, the typical Novosibirsk gales. Beyond the Caucasus, cloudy with isolated precipitation, +3 to 5 degrees. In Petersburg, partly cloudy skies without precipitation during the day, -7 to 9. In the capital at night, -12 to 15. Throughout the district and suburbs, -20 during the day. Temperatures will rise to -7 to 9 degrees. In the last days, ice reservoirs around Moscow and the districts has solidified, which makes for good ice fishing. The prediction was compiled by the Oceanic Meteorological Center. I wish you pleasant rest on the weekend. Goodbye.